Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and it is time once again for a primetime preview. Sunday Night Football. The NFL did the old flex to get the Kansas City Chiefs in against the Los Angeles Chargers. So, hey, we are going to dive right into this tale of the tape between these two powerhouses there in that AFC West division. The Chiefs enter week number 11 atop the AFC playoff picture, taking care of business last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Chargers, they are on the outside looking in after losing 22-16 to the 49ers to drop the record to 5-4. Now, for Chargers fans, some reinforcements could be on the way just in the nick of time for this divisional showdown, as both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have logged 3 consecutive practices heading into this contest. Now, talking about that tail of tape, you have to start at the quarterback position, and Patrick Mahomes. 331 passing yards, 4 touchdowns last week in that 27-17 victory over the Jaguars. Mahomes has now tossed 4 or more touchdowns in 22% of his career games. Now, to put that in perspective, when we're looking at career games, Aaron Rodgers has done this at 14.8%. Peyton Manning, Hall of Famer there, 13.2%. Drew Brees rounds out the top 4 there at 12.9%. That means Patrick Mahomes is doing this at 10% of a greater clip than anyone else in NFL history has been able to do. Now, the Chargers, they would love to have Joey Bosa back this week, but that is not going to happen. He's not even back at practice. In fact, there's not even a timetable for his return. Coach Staley there basically said it's going to be some time. He is still a couple weeks away. Now, it's going to be up to Khalil Mack to apply the pressure on Mahomes this week as he leads his Chargers team with 7 sacks on the season. Back in week number 2, when these teams last met, Mahomes was held to 235 passing yards on 24 of 35 passing, but he did still have 2 touchdowns. Now, in 9 games, Mahomes has been held to less than 3 touchdown passes on just 4 occasions. The other gunslinger in this contest, Justin Herbert, sits 6th in passing this season with 2,450 yards, but he has just 14 touchdowns to go along with 6 interceptions and an 89 rating. Now, while he is averaging 6.3 yards per attempt on the season, that number, it has been trending downward in recent weeks. Herbert has been awful without his top pass catchers. Yes, Chargers fans, I know you're probably going to come at me here in my mentions, but I'm just stating the facts here. He has been without his left tackle, so let's give him some credit for that too. Now, Herbert's average depth of target the last 2 weeks has been 5.3 yards, while his yards per attempt over that same period of time has been 5.7. In fact, his yards per attempt has been held under 6 over the last 4 contests. Now, that tends to happen when a majority of your passes are going to your running back, going to Austin Ekeler, as only 47% of them have been intended for his wide receivers. Good news for Justin Herbert and the Chargers here. Kansas City is allowing 19.6 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, which sits as the 4th most in the NFL, thanks to a league-high 19 touchdown passes surrendered. Now, looking at the running back position here, we'll start with Kansas City once again. Isiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon. Now, the Chiefs, they did put a waiver claim in for Eno Benjamin this past week, which should tell you all you need to know about how they're starting to feel about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had just 4 snaps last week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is like the NFL version of cryptocurrency. It was good when it lasted right at the start of the season. Now it basically has no value whatsoever. I will cut Edwards-Helaire a little bit of slack, though, because the man, he just can't stay healthy. If he didn't have any bad luck, he'd probably have no luck at all. Whether it's been a hip, a knee, a gallbladder, or the ankles, he's had it all over a short period of time, and I don't think that high ankle sprain has ever truly healed. That said, it is time for Pacheco. It is Pacheco time. Fire up Pacheco against this Chargers run defense that is allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the running back position. That's right. The Chargers are allowing, on average, 29.79 fantasy points per game, and none of that, and I mean none of that, is going to end up with CEH. Pacheco earned 56% of the snaps last week and was fairly productive, turning that into 16 carries into 82 yards. That 56% of the snaps is more than any running back has had for the Chiefs all season long. However, all that receiving work, all that pass catching, it has gone to Jerick McKinnon, who caught 6 passes and had a 23% target share last week while running 18 routes. Pacheco and McKinnon both have fantasy value this week. Not only are the Chargers vulnerable against the run, but they've also allowed a 107.6 rating against running backs in the pass game this season, as well as 3 receiving scores out of the backfield. A guy who's no stranger to scoring out of the backfield, Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler, he sits as the RB4 in standard leagues, but in PPR, he is the main man as he averages 3 more fantasy points per game than the next closest running back. On the season, Ekeler has averaged 19 touches and 96.8 total yards per contest there, while recording 9 targets per game and having a 22.3% target share, which leads all running backs. He also has 7.4 receptions per game as well. You can compare Austin Ekeler all you want to the rest of the running backs. I mean, he sits tops there when it comes to 67 receptions on the season. But those 67 receptions, that is top 5 of the entire National Football League. That trails only Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, and Justin Jefferson. And it is actually 4 grabs more than what Travis Kelce has been able to put out there so far this season. Now, last week, Ekeler, he may have only had 63 total yards, but thanks to his 7 receptions, he finished the week as the RB17. Now, Kansas City, they have allowed the 12th most receiving yards to running backs this season to go along with 2 touchdowns in the air, which is obviously an advantage that the Chargers will look to exploit again this week, much like they did back in week number 2 when Ekeler had 9 catches there on 10 targets for 55 yards. Can't talk about Kansas City pass catchers without talking about what they're not going to have available to him this week. Both Mecole Hardman, who ended up on the IR, and Juju Smith-Schuster has been ruled out due to concussion there. I mean, that hit that Juju took, it looked bad, and I mean really, really bad. So that basically leaves Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Kadarius Toney. And Scantling there, he's basically battling an illness himself, and you know what? He's not really all that good to begin with. I do want to kind of give Hardman his due here a little bit there because I feel like Mecole Hardman doesn't get enough love, and since we're not going to be able to talk about him for the next 4 weeks, let's kind of shine a little bit of light on him right now. Since week 5, Hardman ranks 8th in PPR scoring, averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game. That puts him in the same tier over the same period as Cooper Kupp, who has 19.1 fantasy points per game, and CeeDee Lamb at 18.1. So why am I talking about what Hardman has done when he's not going to be able to do it? Mostly because I want to give him a little bit of love, but we're also talking about some vacated production that someone else on this team has to pick up, and that someone is more than likely going to be Kadarius Toney. The Chargers have allowed the 12th fewest fantasy points per game to the receiver position there, allowing 31.6 per game, yielding 9 touchdowns to receivers, and coming away with 7 interceptions on their end, holding quarterbacks to a 91.2 passer rating. Is Kadarius Toney more talented than Mecole Hardman? Perhaps. I mean, in week 10, Toney ran around on 38% of the team's dropbacks there, earning himself 5 targets and 2 carries, but he turned that into 90 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Plus, he looked really good adjusting his gloves mid-catch. Now, we saw what Toney can do when the ball is in his hands. We saw this last season with the Giants. Toney is a dynamic playmaker when he's on the field. He's one of those rare talents that can turn a low ADOT into huge fantasy production. Remember those goal line shovel passes years ago there? It feels like years ago. It was really only last year that Tyreek Hill was going to get. Don't be shocked if we see Toney get a couple of those in the next few weeks. As the Chiefs have been losing pass catches, the Chargers may finally be getting a couple of them back. Keenan Allen missed the first round against his Chiefs team back in September on the 19th there, but Mike Williams, he certainly stepped up in that absence, recording 113 yards and a touchdown, hauling 8 of 10 targets along the way. Now, both receivers, they've been spotted at practice. I just told you they put in 3 consecutive practices, so you can bet that they're probably going to be in the lineup. But you know what? This is the Chargers team. This is Keenan Allen. I'm probably not going to hold my breath until I see him catch that first pass. Now, Joshua Palmer, DeAndre Carter, if both Allen and Williams return, then Palmer is going to go back to that wide receiver 3 status on this team's pecking order there as far as pass catcher. Actually, he's probably going to go to the 4th option in the passing game because Austin Ekeler is there. When the Chargers last faced the Chiefs, Palmer, he had some catches there. He hauled in a few passes there. He turned that into 30 yards and a touchdown, while Carter added 3 catches himself for 55 yards. Whoever is catching passes this week against the Chiefs could certainly be in for a solid day, as the Chiefs are allowing the 5th most fantasy points this season to opposing wide receivers there, thanks in part to the 12 touchdowns in which they've surrendered, which is one behind the league leaders in that category, with the majority of that coming out of the slot. Whether it's Allen, whether it's Carter coming out of the slot, they're more than likely going to be lining up opposite of L'Jarius Sneed, who's been great for IDP owners, which means he's kind of struggled a little bit on the field. Now, Sneed has allowed 75% of a catch rate there, along with a 115 passer rating so far this season. You can't talk about pass catches, especially when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, without talking about the tight end position here and Travis Kelce. Kelce has been an unstoppable force all season long, as he is averaging 82 yards per game and has 8 touchdowns in 9 contests. Travis Kelce is the fantasy football tight end one. Whether you talk about season-long points or points per game, it doesn't matter. He's also got a 24.3% target share and a 22.5% air share. He also sits 5th in deep targets and is 1st in red zone targets amongst the tight end position. Last week, he caught 6 of 7 targets, 4 touchdowns, and 81 yards against the Jaguars. That said, Derwin James is a real difference maker on the defensive side of the ball for this Chargers team, as James and the Chargers held George Kittle to 21 yards on a single reception last week. Back in week 2, the Chargers did contain Kelce to a degree, limiting him to 51 yards on 7 targets. The Chargers' response to Travis Kelce at the tight end position, it is Gerald Everett. Now, back in week 2, when Allen missed the first of many games, Everett stepped up, seeing 10 targets while recording 6 receptions for 71 yards, which worked out to about 11.8 yards per reception. Now, let's be honest. We really don't know who's going to be in and who's going to be out. Everyone in this primetime showdown is just like the rest of us. They're day-to-day and questionable at best. We're expecting Keenan Allen. We're expecting Mike Williams. We're expecting Gerald Everett. We know Juju's not going to be there. We know Mecole Hardman's not going to be there. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he should be there. But these are all names that you need to monitor as we lead up to Sunday Night Football. That being said, make sure you head over to fantasypoints.com today. Use promo code 22Vipers10. That's going to get you 10% off that subscription. And we will see you next week.